So Joe and Rick, can you see us on the screen? Do you see yourselves on the screen?
Yep, I can see everybody.
Okay. All right, it's just gonna look strange, I think. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Barb Halpin. I am the staff liaison to the Emergency Services Sales and Use Tax Grant Program, otherwise known as SGPAC. And I am going to share this evening's slides so that we can get started. Just now I have no idea what you're all looking at. There we go. Okay. So tonight's meeting, it's August 25th, 2026. This is our annual reorganization meeting, which we hold once a year. Our committee starts in the summer and it goes through a calendar year. I guess an opposite of the calendar year. We have the grant program that starts in the fall, and then we have another one in the spring. And I'm going to go into what the grant program is all about. But first, I just wanted to give you that's tonight's agenda. We'll do welcome and introductions. We'll do a little bit of reorganization housekeeping. And then we have some items of committee business to finish up our night tonight. So the first thing is we have two new members, which is super exciting. I'm going to ask Joe and Emmy to go last so that you get to hear from the others first. And tonight I'd like you to talk about, give us your name, what made you interested in joining the committee, and what's your favorite fall activity. So see if we can remember that. So I'll stop sharing. And let's go ahead and I will start with Harry.
What?
If you need that cheat list, it's your name, position you hold, a little bit about yourself, and what's your favorite fall activity.
Oh. Harry Ross. I'm a retired emergency physician and biotech entrepreneur. I think I'm the position at large. I used to own property at 4 Mile, but I don't anymore. I think I'm here because of my experience with emergency services.
Perfect. And what's your favorite thing to do in the fall?
Oh, in the fall. You know, I just like house projects. I've got a construction project I'm doing now, and I'm having so much fun with it.
That's awesome. Okay, let's go with Ben.
Hey there, everyone. Ben Hogan. I'm a volunteer firefighter and ski patroller here in Boulder County. I'm currently serving in the at-large position and really excited to be on this committee just to provide feedback from people who are on the ground. And I feel like we all learn together through the discussions. I think we're all just informed citizens trying to help other citizens in Boulder County. And I think that we learn a lot in these discussions. And I'm really excited to have some new faces on the committee and looking forward to learning more from you both, from both of your backgrounds. In the fall, I'm a big skier, so I'm getting ready for ski season. I'm waxing skis, sharpening edges, patching core shots from the last season, getting gear. So yeah, just getting ready, ramped up for the upcoming ski season.
Well, we hope you'll bring us some early snow, Ben.
I'm hoping so.
Let's jump over to Cynthia.
Hey everyone, I'm Cynthia. I live in Ward, so I'm a mountain resident. What brought me to this board, did you ask? Was that a question?
Yeah. What brought you to your interest in
I live in the mountains. Fire is a conversation we've been having for a long time. I've been up here for 24 years. Things have changed a lot. We used to have a fire season, now we have fire year. And I used to work for the town of Netherland for 10 years and did a lot of stuff around wildfire mitigation and defensible space and helped get a grant. What I love to do in fall. Well, geez, I love hiking, but currently I'm bucking a lot of wood and splitting a lot of wood. So we're 4 chords in, and we're gonna keep rolling. I got a lot of trees that have come down with the wind, so I have a lot of free wood, and I love that.
That's awesome. Let's go to our other mountain resident, Rick.
Hello, my name is Rick Scheingold. I am on the Emergency Services Grant Program Advisory Committee. I represent people who either have been or are currently on a rural fire department. And as such, I am currently on the Gold Hill Fire Protection District response team. If you call 911 in the mountains, I'm probably who's going to show up, both for medical, rescue, and fire. Fall. I try not to fall. When I do, I roll to prevent injury. Though, like Cynthia, it is that time of year to be cutting and bucking and making wood for winter. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
That's terrific. Okay, let's see. Doug, I don't know if Doug is kind of on the phone, I believe. Kind of half on, half off. He's got activities tonight. Okay, we'll skip Doug and go to, I guess we are to our new people. So, Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be with you all. From talking with Barb, it sounds like you all have a pretty great culture going on. And so I'm excited to be a part of that and to witness what you all are doing together. I'm in the accessibility community representative. I come to this organization. I used to be a firefighter down in West Metro, which is kind of Lakewood, Wheat Ridge area. I started as a firefighter, paramedic, then became a lieutenant. And now I'm a board member with West Metro. I'm no longer on the department responding to 911 calls. And in terms of the accessibility component, I used to work with an organization that took marginalized youth out into the mountains, and then also worked with Big Brothers Big Sisters and a bunch of other organizations like that as well. My favorite fall activity is I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old. So if anybody else was watching the BVSD thing today at 3 o'clock, that was appointment viewing in our household to see which schools are going to be closed. But I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and so I used to kind of grew out of doing pumpkins, but man, I think pumpkins with young kids and then putting their hands in the guts and stuff is adorable. So oddly, that's something I really look forward to.
Thanks for bringing back some memories. It's for sure. Emmy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Emmy Loxo. Really excited to be here. I'm a new search and rescue organization representative. I've been a volunteer in the county for a little over 6 years, responded to just under 450 search and rescue calls in that time, often in collaboration with the other fire and rescue agencies in the county. So that's been awesome. I also do public safety education for the team that I'm on. Yeah, looking forward to learning from you all and working together to support all the amazing organizations we have here.
What's your favorite fall activity?
I'm mostly going to say pumpkin carving. I don't have kids. I just love doing it. I think it's really fun.
That's terrific. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy other people's artwork tremendously. Well, this is great. I think that with our 2 new additions and the valuable experience that we've had on the board, this is really going to be a strong year. And excited to see how all these diverse experiences and comes into play. So we're going to do a little bit of, I'm going to do an overview of the emergency services sales tax, mostly for our 2 newcomers. So for those of you who have seen this presentation many times before, I apologize, but I'll try to go through it rather quickly. So the sales tax was passed in 2022. So this is the 4th year of the revenue coming in. And the purpose of it was to be able to collect supplemental funding for all of those services that are so important and so critical to the residents of Boulder County, but that didn't have enough funding on its own. And with 20-something fire districts, some with shoestring budgets, some that are better funded, the whole idea was that this tax could bring in additional funding pretty stably because the sales tax rate is pretty consistent. And the commissioners every year kind of plan how the full amount of the sales tax will be distributed. Right now, the amount is 0.1%, which equals about 9 million a year. And the pie, the full amount of that is split in 3 parts. Half of the tax goes to capital expenses, and I'm going to share with you the county new search and rescue building that's being built that Rocky Mountain Rescue Group will occupy. Another quarter goes to annual and continuing services. Those are the ambulances, some extra rangers and firefighters, and services that support them. And the area that you all are focused on is that last quarter, the grants pool, which has pretty consistently been 2.5 million a year. Again, the commissioners can change that, but they like to hold that number. And the bulk, the $2 million goes out in the fall to the mountain and rural fire districts. And the remaining 500,000 goes to search and rescue and trail safety projects in the spring. And again, this is another way of looking at what all goes into the sales tax, what it helps pay for. The new search and rescue building, there was a groundbreaking. Let's see, Emmy, you and I were both there, maybe April-ish, May. Wasn't too long ago. They've got one wall up. It's a really narrow lot. This was an old post office building that was given to the county specifically for search and rescue. We can tear it down, which we have done, but we cannot change the use of that property. So it was very tight, very small. RMR's been working out of there for many years. And with the sales tax, the county committed to building a much more modern building that will allow for equipment to be stored safely, for there to be classrooms, for there to be sleeping space. And that will open up hopefully by next summer. So we're looking probably 1 more year. And they are constructing this right up to the property line of the next door neighbor. They're going to remove this pole, but that's what it looks like today. And then this rendering is what it should look like a year from now. So very excited about that. Where you all focus on is the emergency services grant program. So it's about a quarter of the tax and goes out in grants to communities. We don't take any administrative fees out of the grant program. It all goes to grants. And there's 2 grant pools a year. The fall one, which we'll be focusing on tonight, goes to the mountain and rural fire districts or municipal districts performing emergency services in those areas. The spring grant pool is set aside for search and rescue and trail safety. The first pool, the fall pool, is a known group. You have to be a fire protection district to apply, but the spring grant pool is really open to any organization that wants to make a case for how they add to either search and rescue or trail safety. Sorry, it's a really busy slide, but we've given out $6.5 million in 6 rounds. So this will be our 7th round this fall. We're heading into our 4th year of grants, and 4 of the members here have been on the committee since then. We're really grateful that Ben and Rick and Doug signed up for a 2nd term. And then Lynette was reappointed last year. And then everybody else has been coming in steadily since then. But there's a whole list of things. And when we get together in October, we'll review the list of everything that has been funded with money from the grant program. It's just another way of looking at it by the types. Everything from the highest, which is radios and communications, was a big focus early on to make sure everybody's up to speed with a dual band radios by 2029. And then vehicles are also very popular, capital improvements, other equipment. and training. So that's basically the sales tax part of it. I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions? Let's say it brings in about 9 million a year. The tax will cut in half starting in 2028. The reason it was designed that way is that the building will be built and we no longer will have a dedicated purpose for that second half of the tax. So it'll go down to 0.05. However, I have heard that there's some interest in the community to try to renew that with the voters. So I might go on the ballot next year to see if they want to extend that. Rick, you have your hand up.
Thanks. In previous rounds, one of the things that we discussed was ambulances in rural areas, specifically Gilpin, AMR, and possibly, you know, trimming a little off the top to make sure those services are supported. Any action on that?
When you say trimming off the top, do you mean trying to reduce the costs on that, or?
No, I think the idea was that as part of maybe either the Boulder County Sheriff's Office or the commissioners themselves, we're going to reach out and say, oh yeah, we do need those services in that part of the district and fund it. So the question was it going to be taken out of the big lump? Right now, there's already money going to the sheriff's office and other agencies. The question is, will there be money coming off the top for these like Gilpin ambulance when they come into the district, or is that something we're going to be doing during the funding process?
Thanks for that question, Rick. I did meet with the sheriff and the undersheriff back in the spring about that very question. And what they've said, the contract goes through next year, their current contract, and AMR is contracted to serve every place in the county outside of the cities. And so the sheriff has said they will continue to pay for that contract. They are not considering bringing parts and pieces of ambulance services that are on the borders, whether it's Gilpin to the south or let's see, we had Estes Park, I believe, to the north. So at this point, and I'm happy to have the sheriff's office come and talk to us about that when we could get together in person. But it seems to be that the sheriff would prefer that we just keep on AMR to be available for all those other areas. And there's been some flux about that because of, you know, Boulder giving up its contract, City of Boulder giving up its contract with AMR. But they are definitely working with the county. And so thanks for bringing that up. I don't think we'll be funding that either through the grant program, that the ambulances, the extra ambulance services this fall. Hey, anybody else? Thanks for that question. All right, we'll go ahead and continue here. So not the most flattering of pictures for all of us, but I wanted to give, you know, the idea of this tonight's business agenda. We've already gone through introductions, but I just wanted to lay everybody out here. So again, wonderful to have 2 new members and wonderful to have 7 returning members. We do need to elect a chair and a vice chair. I was going to nominate Rick and Lynette as the 2 longest people. Rick has told me no way, no how. And Lynette hasn't showed up on the call tonight. So
Doesn't that mean she's nominated by default?
That's yes. I was going to say that's usually how that works. And Rick, if you were going to jump off, I was going to pull that card on you.
Barb, I thought it was always the new people's job.
I don't
Yeah,
think
but we don't
that's
know what we're doing
fair.
yet, so.
Sorry.
So that leaves Harry and Cynthia to nominate yourselves. Unless
I
Rick,
would rather not.
okay.
Really, Rick?
Did-
I'm getting like chairman energy off of you. So
Me
I
too.
just
I think
I
Barbara-
feel like with the knowledge and the presence and the what the zest that you're bringing to this meeting tonight. You're ready for
Barb?
this position.
Barb, we have a quorum, right?
Yes, we do.
I formally
Nope,
nominate
there's Lynette.
Cynthia as the leader of this parade.
I'm in school full time, sir. This is I cannot take on this task. I have to be real. Like I was questioning whether or not I would stay on. I'm trying to, push myself to fulfill my term. Not that because I do love it, but like I'm juggling a lot, and I don't want to give less than this board deserves. So I
Okay.
wasn't trying to volunteer myself, Rick. I was just feeling like chair energy in such great abundance. I don't know. What do you think, Ben?
I am trying here to get Cynthia on because Lynette on, sorry.
Let's see what Lynette has to say.
Yeah. I think she was trying to come in as a attendee and it doesn't.
Perhaps we can
Let's see if
sweeten
I
the
can-
deal and have Doug as the chair. And
Doug could be chair. I mean, often the vice chair does step into that role.
Sounds like you're bullying me here, Barb.
I wasn't sure if Doug was still on.
I heard
You've
that.
had 2 years, 2 years of the,
I can do it if nobody else wants to. It's fine.
that's the spirit.
that's a resounding
Yeah.
maybe, yes. Okay, all right, Doug. Well, we'll, if I can ever get Lynette on here, I will see if she wants to be vice chair, unless Harry or,
I'd
Sitting on the
prefer not to,
sidelines.
if that's okay.
okay, all right, boy, you guys. I don't, I try to make it easy on the chair, right, Ben? Not that hard.
You do. You really do.
Welcome, Joe. Your duties are gonna magnify.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's gonna be Joe and Emmy next year. Okay, so we've got Doug as the chair, and as soon as I can get Lynette on, I will try to convince her to be the vice chair. We'll go back to sharing. Okay, so one of the pieces of business tonight is basically to give you an overview of our meetings. We meet the fourth Tuesday, but only about 6 months a year, and it's not as regular as every other month. So I'll go into why that is. During the grant cycle, we definitely meet one time in person, and we go through all of the applications and we discuss them as a group, and you all kind of form your recommendations out of that. And usually we have one extra follow-up meeting that same cycle to help sort of firm up those recommendations. Sometimes the first one is just about, I'm trying to get Lynette in here. Sometimes the first one is just about coming up with everything to a certain point. I can go out and get some more information for you, bring it back, and then that second one is firming up the details. So because we have 2 meetings at least every grant cycle, we try to give you the other days, months off. And right now, if we're going to, for this cycle, we are going to follow similar to what we did last year. We're going to start it a little early. We've usually started around the 15th of September, but I'm ready to launch once you guys give me my marching instructions tonight. And I plan to do that next Tuesday, September 1st. We give people the fire districts about 6 weeks to put in their applications. I give you all 10 days to score them on your own. Why is it doing that? And then we come together, make recommendations, and then I take those to the Board of County Commissioners at one of their official Tuesday business meetings. Sorry, I don't know why this kind of went off track. I'm going to skip this slide and go to, when we met in June, we did kind of a hot wash on what's working and what's not, or what could be improved, I guess. And one of the things that you all shared with me was we want to try to get the best applications we can. And in the past, sorry, it's not making it any bigger. I can't even read that. What you all shared with me was that you want to make the application review process better for applicants and for all of you when you're scoring. And to get everybody on the same page with what the purpose is of the sales tax and what the grant program is intended for. So our objectives were to help applicants better understand what you're looking for when you review ballots or applications. And then we look at those that match the ballot language and try to dissuade applications that don't. And this is where Rick usually reminds us that the focus should be on underserved and rural mountain fire districts. We've had the cities apply, and when we've had grant money available, we've provided some funding for that. The idea is to really try to focus on the underfunded rural mountain districts. And then provide them. So the one things you wanted me to do is meet with the BCFFA, which is the Boulder County Firefighters Association. I did that in August, and I'm going to host another open house information session in September, date to be determined, that anybody can come on and ask questions. And I will also make open house like hours that I'm available for fire districts if they want to contact me. So just a little bit more hands-on. We're really going to emphasize some of the questions that we don't get the best responses on. We're going to go into that in a moment. And okay. And the goal of everything ultimately
Barb,
yes.
have Emmy and Joe been provided the language of the tax that the residents voted on?
Wouldn't that be smart of me to have done that? I don't think so. I can certainly, it's on the webpage, and so I will make sure that they get that.
Just a link, just so they could
package
see
next
exactly what people said yes to.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And Emmy and Joe, I will be sending you a link to that ballot language after this meeting. It's pretty straightforward. And as I say, we've got some people here that will bring us back when we go astray. Okay, let me see where I was here. You don't need to see that. That's my screensaver on my second screen. I'm trying to get everybody's faces out of it, but it won't let me. So let me, yikes. Program is being so weird tonight. All right. The next thing I wanted to do was go through, we've pretty much designed our application questions and our scoring criteria based on past rounds, based on feedback that everybody gives right after the round is done so that it's fresh in our minds. So we're not going to spend a lot of time tonight. Emmy and Joe, you're going to have to kind of go along for the ride, I think, on the first round. A lot of it has already been set up and determined so that we can launch next week and move forward. Let me just find my questions. Okay. Again, when I sent out that link last week, I did include some Google Docs links that you can look at more closely. But where we generally aim for is a list of questions. These are all kind of what we require, information about the organization. And then we go into them giving us information about the project and how much they want, sort of summing it up. And then we get into the questions that really, this is where the committee digs into how well, or not how well, but what kind of responses that we get. From past rounds, this B5, we've decided that we really are looking for projects that are shovel ready and could be implemented. We try to implement them within a year. Sometimes capital projects take longer, and we'll adjust for that. We ask them whether the requested amount of funding is enough to fully pay, or sometimes we split the cost with the agency, or they have additional money from a different source that they contribute. And we ask them, to be honest and tell, because the last couple rounds we've gotten more requests than we have funding for. So not everybody's going to get everything they want. So we ask them to sort of prioritize how, if they only get partial funding, what they want to focus on. And then we ask how the project will be sustained, because what we don't do is we don't do multi-year grants, and we don't provide for upkeep after something has been purchased. So, if they're going to be looking at buying new equipment or a new truck or something, they have to tell us how they're going to be able to manage maintenance and that kind of thing. And then the question, and I wish Lynette was on, we've really tried to get the fire agencies to think about how they get to know their community outside of when it's an emergency. And we've asked this question differently every time. And because we tend to still get well, we go out every time anyone calls 911, we go out on a call. We've saved lives, and which is great. What we're trying to do is dig in a little deeper, because maybe there's somebody in their community who would be afraid to call 911, even if they were, having a life event. So I've made up this really long question now, but the idea is, are we getting any closer to really trying to get, and this is what I covered with BCFFA too, is, give us more than we go out on every call and we don't, we don't differentiate in how we provide service. So Lynette has been really helpful. Jody, who's not on tonight, in terms of sort of giving examples of what people could do. And many agencies do. Like Boulder Rural does a lot of open houses. They invite the community to come in, get the kids, check out the equipment, stuff like that. But there's all kinds of things. Go ahead. Is that Ben?
Yeah, I can say a couple words here. And like Joe, Emmy, really appreciate any thoughts you have here. Is that we ask all these questions, and our ranking is usually you score an answer on a scale of 1 to 3, and this is weighted equally as other questions. So this is something that we want to elicit a strong answer, because overwhelmingly the response to this question is we answer the phone when someone calls 911. We respond no matter what, and we don't care about the race, ethnicity, age of someone who we're responding to, which is great. But we get, we'll read 12 responses to that question that are worded exactly that way from every fire department that answers this question. And then what we want to encourage is we want to encourage responses that help groups differentiate themselves from that kind of standard answer. And that can be things like we participate in National Night Out. We participate in open houses. We have my fire department once had something for Latino community members to come in and check out the fire trucks, things like that, to kind of engage. So again, this is like not my experience, and we've been looking at this for years. So you guys are new faces, new thoughts in here. I would love to hear any thoughts from you guys on this.
Thank you, Ben. And I agree.
Yeah, so I would just add the literal words that they use is "we help everyone."
Mhm.
And we've seen it so many times, and we've tried to get them to, you know, someone had submitted materials in Spanish and how they reach out, or they might talk about the makeup of the people who actually serve, you know, that are being served in the community, that are working on the fire department. So there's lots of ways to answer the question, but we have really struggled to get answers and to express to these groups that these questions are weighted and you are getting points for them. So we are looking at that from, you know, the highest two are going to get the highest amount of points, are probably going to get a good chunk of their funding, or maybe the majority of their funding, depending on how much they're asking. And just to back up a little bit, something Barb was saying, you know, the reason why the ballot language is important is because we have these big groups who are asking for, you know, if we have a $5 million pot, they're asking for 4 million. And so we're also dealing with, you know, and they need the money for sure. But it's good to get input on this question, because this has been, you know, there are varying levels of grant experience with all of these, especially the small rural. I live in Ward, we're one of them, but we're trying to encourage them to do what they can to try to present a good case for what they're requesting.
Thanks for adding all that, Cynthia. Somebody else's hand up?
Yeah, I've got two questions. Thank
Joe?
you all for the insight on that. So I'm wondering, first, is the is the funding tied to something that's making their environment more inclusive? So I'm thinking something like we've had a number of stations that have put in a pumping room, like a lactation room. So if women just came back from maternity leave, they now have a separate private space other than their dorm room. So that would be something that would be tied to the funding. Or is this just a criteria of like, hey, we're giving preferential treatment to organizations that seem to be more inclusive and to be drawing other people into their community and into the process of the firefighting? And then the second thing I wanted to ask is it always something formal, or you know, so is it always like a National Night Out you mentioned, Ben, or a open houses, or do you also give credence to times when crews go above and beyond and they see, you know, a patient can't get out of their house, they've got to go to the emergency room, but they also don't have a ramp for their wheelchair. And so the ambulance takes them to the hospital, but the crew recognizes there's an extra need above and beyond the 911 call, and that they're staying and that they're doing things beyond. I've seen it with ramps. I've seen it with, you know, people mowing lawns for people that have different ability and they can't get out to mow their lawns, just totally overgrown. So there's so many ways when these crews get inside of people's houses or their lifestyles that maybe it's an informal way that sometimes they're helping too.
Thanks. Joe, Emmy, can I answer Joe's and then I'll jump to you? And anybody else, feel free to jump in. So right now, as Cynthia was saying, it's a question that is scored like other questions. And so if we have 10 questions, well, the first couple, you know, are more about what's your agency and what are you doing. So it's really these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that they get scored on. And we haven't gone as far, it's more of a carrot than a stick. We haven't gone as far as specifically say, you know, tying funding. It's a Boulder County initiative that whenever we're meeting with the community, giving out money, that kind of thing, that we emphasize inclusion. So this committee's been super, super helpful getting on board and trying to come up with ways to do that. I would say that there may be a time when funding gets more tied to proven inclusivity. We haven't done so yet, and part of that was the fire districts really wanted, you know, several rounds of equipment and all that they could ask for. In terms of the formal, no, we were just trying to give a couple examples to sort of get people thinking, because we generally don't get anything specific, or it's rare. We might get an agency or an organization that says, you know, we do X, Y, Z, but usually it doesn't sound like the organizations on their own have put together a plan. So we're trying to sort of lead them to maybe thinking outside the box, or just starting to come up with a plan. But no, I mean, any idea, you know, anything would be better than nothing. But we also don't want, you know, I mean, if they come up with an idea of, you know, knowing who might need additional evacuation help. You know, when I worked at the Emergency Operations Center here in Boulder County, you know, we really tried to work with nonprofits to figure out who might be housebound and who needs somebody to go to their door if they're in the evacuation zone. And I don't know how much fire districts could contribute to that, but, you know, that could be something for the ability community, is really knowing, you know, and I know in Jamestown, it's so small, they tend to know that. Maybe Ward is the same, but when you get into these larger areas, you know, it may not be clear who might need additional assistance during an emergency. So I hope that helps. So we are, you know, we are weighing that question. It's not a freebie, but it's not hit or, you know, all or nothing if they don't do a great job on that question. Emmy?
Yes. So one thing, this is great context, thank you. I guess one thing that I was unclear on from reading the question itself was whether the funding requested should go to a program that is related to this explicitly, or if the programs can be separate from whatever asks are being made for funding. I
That's
assume
really
it's the
good,
latter,
fresh
but,
insight.
or it could be both.
It's more
I just
about the
wasn't sure.
organization. We would love for somebody to come forward with a project or a program that truly was about outreach, you know, doing more of these activities,
Gotcha.
getting to know whether it's a Spanish speaking or another language community. We haven't seen anything like that yet. So right now, it's about, you know, kind of tapping at the door to the agency about what they do, but it's not tied to the project.
Gotcha.
If that is unclear, then I would love any suggested help on, like, maybe instead of how does your work, we could say, how does your agency help ensure? Let me see if I can.
Yeah, and talking about, you know, maybe like what kind of public programming do you do outside of responding to
Yeah.
emergencies, or public program that you participate in, like the National Night Out. That's a great example.
I'll be sure to include, yeah, that specifically had been mentioned. And I will send this question back out to everybody in this after the meeting. And if you have thoughts before Monday, yeah, next Monday before I launch on Tuesday, that would be really helpful. If you think of a different way we're trying different things to solicit a little bit of a more strong response to it. I just got the text from Lynette that they're looking for a missing person around Gross Reservoir, so she got called out. But Lynette has done several jobs with the county. I'll just give her intro. She's been a park open space ranger. She does the co-responder with the sheriff's office, which is providing essentially on-site mental health first contact with somebody who's just witnessed, a traumatic situation or, is in crisis themselves. And she's often really helpful in, she's also worked with almost all the fire districts too. So she has strong feelings about this. And then Jody Silva is our recreation organization representative. She is the marketing director for the Icon Ski Pass. And she also is an avid outdoors and skier like Ben, and can really help us. It sounds like with Elmi, your public safety outreach and education, that those two things will complement each other really well. So without spending much more time on this, again, I'll send it out if we can make it crisper, if we can shorten it. I just wanted to give, something to work with before putting it into the application. And then the bonus question, this is one we decided we would give extra credit to. And that is if we're really also trying to get the agencies, if they can, to share or collaborate on their requests. Not always possible, it's not always overlaying, but if there's an opportunity that we can avoid duplicative services, so cost savings, volume discounts, that kind of thing. We have in the past when 3 different agencies asked for new PPE firefighting gear, we tried to see if they could all go in together and get a discount for that. And so those are kinds of things we look at, but we don't require that, and we don't tie their request to that.
And in the past, BCFFA has also acted as a umbrella organization when they know that all departments need something.
Yeah, last fall it kind of surprised us. It was what do you call the SCBA? What does that stand for? Ben, Rick.
Self-contained
Basically the
alarming
oxygen
apparatus.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That we had out of the blue, we had none for 2 years, and then we got a bunch of requests last year. And so,
Yeah,
we're hoping that BC. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
what we see year after year is there's some things that are always going out of date, whether it's protective equipment or the air tanks for the SCBA or vehicles. There's always something that is in cycle that's going to need to be replaced. So there's never going to be a lack of need.
Yes. This gets me back to when I went to the BCFFA, I did get a request from one of the fire protection districts. I did not know who the chief was, and I still to this day don't know which district he represents. But he asked if we can move the fall grant up earlier. We'd started it in September because initially the fire district had told us summer's our busy time. If we're not fighting fires here, we're sending our folks out to other areas to fight fires. We don't have time to write grants. What they've told me now is that as long as it goes into September, halfway to September, they usually have somebody back who could do the grant writing. So one of the things that I'm going to show you in a moment is asking that next year we move everything up a month. So instead of reorganizing in August and launching in September, we reorganize in July and launch in August. So I need to do a poll kind of as to how that would work. But this year we're on track. We're not going to, I could still kind of move things up, but there was agreement from the fire agencies that, no, we're okay for this year. the reason they want to do that is so they would have a decision to set their budgets in October. Usually by October 15th, they like to know how much money they expect to have to do their next year's budget. So usually we don't know until early to mid-November. By moving it up, we would be able to give them the commissioners could sign off on the recommendations by that October 15th date, and they'd have a little more assurance as to what kind of money they'd be taking in. Let me just quickly show you what that would look like. So again, this is where we are. This is where we have been for the last 3 years. Again, we have moved it up by at least 2 weeks, but we still, by giving them 6 weeks and you 2 weeks, and then meeting at our normal time in October, we really can't give recommendations until November. And then you all would take a break for 3 months. And then the spring has worked out okay. I think we'll stick to what we do in the spring. But the difference would start in 2027. We'd reorganize in July and move everything up a month. This is a terrible chart, but essentially it just tells you where things line up. So does anybody who's currently on the call think a year from now you'll have issues? Does anybody take the full month of July off? And it's okay if we don't have a full committee, but if there could be some level of, we can make this accommodation for the fire districts, or we can't because it just won't work out. It'd be helpful to know that.
Are you talking about the search and rescue round?
No, that one seems to be okay because we get that done before Memorial Day. The idea is not to bump into, we get that out of the way by the early May. We could move that one up too. And we can look at that. But we've already started that one sooner than the last 2 rounds. And again, the idea is to try to give you off as much. We do have some people, I think, that are crunched around January, February. So we've tended to start that in March. So March, April, first half of May. And again, sometimes it just doesn't work for people's schedules, but if long we could get most people on. So I guess that is the end of my formal presentation. I just needed to get an okay from you that you're okay with the calendar as proposed for this fall. Okay, that works for everybody. Great. I will send out that question if anybody has the time and interest in helping me wordsmith it a little bit more about the equity and inclusion. And yeah, and then the scoring. So what will happen is we'll get all the applications in by October 13th. There's the application that records the applications also has a scoring mechanism. So I will send that instructions out, but essentially you look at the application, you answer 6 questions, I think it is. And then I provide you at that first meeting, the review meeting, with the cumulative scores. Kind of, it's an interesting way to see, which proposals score high and which ones don't score as high. It's not, we don't base the funding exactly on the scoring, but it's a good starting point and it's a good guide. If there's tougher decisions that have to be made, you know, those that scored lower, you know, probably don't get as, you know, maybe doesn't get all the funding, or there's many reasons why things don't always get funded fully. And I think this committee's done a really good job at just attacking it from several areas based on, you know, equity across the, you know, all the districts. We'll look at how much the districts have gotten in the past, what others have asked for, kind of keep things within a reasonable range. Although we, you know, we'll get applications for as little as 20,000 and then up to 300,000 and 400,000. So sometimes it's a challenge to sort of balance that big of a range. But as I say, this committee has done an amazing job doing just that. Does anybody, again, I don't have anything more to share tonight. Cynthia?
I just have a question for you, Barb. How much work are we adding to your schedule with the meet and greets that you're going to be doing with different fire departments and or a public gathering? Because you could probably modify some of these slides you made for us for that purpose of, you know, trying to show them what a good example of these answers would be. Maybe, you know, I don't know if you want to use past examples if people feel okay, you know, about that. But maybe, you know, seeing as you've been the continuous person on this board since the start, and you have had such experience in your past, to help them understand what the board likes to see, you know, the different aspects, kind of driving home that ballot piece that was really important to us when we talked about that at our last meeting, of you know, understanding that the board is considering this spectrum of, you know, fortune favors the bold, you got to ask, and you're trying to take the entire pot that we have, because it obviously puts us board members or us committee members into a place of having to make really tough decisions on, you know, when we have a limited pot and we have big hands, and just trying to, you know, I don't know if they care about that, you know, I mean, I don't have to hear about our existential crisis here, but just in terms of understanding, you know, what we're working with to try to score things and really be fair, because of course we'd love to fund everybody, but we have to be, you know, we need legitimate parameters. So we're looking for that kind of stuff. And all of those things are going to give them a much better score. And I sure hope they use you as a resource to improve their grant presentations and things.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple ideas. I don't know how many people will participate on a virtual or online type session. But I am going to put out some, you know, e-newsletters and all, and I think I'll highlight a couple sections that we haven't done before, you know, really dig into the equity question, you know, what makes a good proposal, give a little bit of behind the scenes look at, you know, what all has to come together for an application to be, you know, considered strongly, that kind of thing. So I'll put a little more creative energy into that. I don't know if any of you ever have an opportunity. I know several of you are active with Fire District, like Rick and Ben. If you can talk, if you ever have a chance where you're in the room with some of these chiefs and other agency folks, that'd be great. Yeah, and I think, you know, it's shifted over time. There was a lot of pent up need at the beginning, and it was really about just getting the money out and trying to do it fairly, you know, in the most fair manner possible. I think we're entering the stage where we can start, you know, pushing back a little bit and asking for a little bit more than just sort of like here's what we want. kind of Christmas lift type thing. The other thing we're considering, and I don't think we're there yet, but some of the agencies have asked for more money over like, maybe 2 years if they have a capital project. And the county can't expend beyond the current year. You know, we assume sales tax people will continue buying things and we'll have the money, but legally we can only give out money in the year, not, you know, in the current year or the year ahead. But there might be a way to structure loans or sorry, grants that are sizable. And then we'd have to come up with some parameters. You know, if a fire agency gets, you know, $300,000 capital improvement loan, or sorry, saying loan grant for 2 years, then they can't come back for a number of years for a grant. You know, we can look at sort of, I almost want to do another survey of the fire districts. We did one when we first started. You know, it might be a good year to do some solicitation and find out, you know, that feedback that I got the other day, which is, can you let us know what we're going to get sooner? But there's probably other things that they're haven't had a chance to tell us that would be helpful. But for this year, we're going to just go through a standard.
Are they aware it cuts in half?
They, those that are paying attention, yes. I mean, they've always known that the building took half the tax. I was not on the committee that actually set up the ballot language. I mean, you know, the search and rescue groups, RMR and BES were very involved along with the fire chiefs in creating the language that they wanted to see. But the details of how it would be distributed weren't quite worked out at the beginning. So we've been doing that since the ballot measure passed. But I know a lot. I think there's some that wish they didn't have to apply every year, or that they could get more money, even if it meant sitting out for the next 2 years, kind of thing. So
It could be nice to formalize, like at the conclusion of the grant process of each round, kind of like a survey, so that you can get feedback every year, see the kinds of things that people are saying
Yeah.
and thinking about.
That's a great idea. I will plan to do that. Because last year we got almost every fire district applied. The first year few did because the BCFFA asked for almost $2 million for the radios that they distributed to everybody. The second year, I think we had 12 or 13. And then last year we had 20. And I think there's only 23, maybe. So I don't know whether this year we're going to get that same number or if some are going to sit out for a year. We never really know until the deadline hits and we see how many proposals we get. But I will plan to do a survey afterwards of the fire districts.
Barb, just as a new member, so 23 in the fall potential ones, what are you looking at in the spring? Is it just the 2 search and rescue groups? Is there more trail maintenance groups that jump into?
Yeah. The spring is really the open round. That's where I fake the trees to try to get
the dogs and the rescue and the horses.
horses.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
search and rescue agencies in the county.
The 4x4 rescue. I'm all kinds of fun and exciting search and rescue folk.
It is, yeah. Even the bike group, we've given them first aid training. So when they're out on the trails, if somebody gets hurt and they need some basic first aid, they could stop and administer that right there. Or while they're waiting for RMR or BES to show up. But yeah, RMR and BES, I think will consistently put in a request in the spring, and they might be one too that would want to drag, you know, have a more sizable amount over 2 years. So we'll do the same with them. We'll kind of do a survey And just sort of, Emmy and I talked about whether there's any conflict of interest, and she is a volunteer with RMR. There is none. As I've mentioned to this board before, unless you hold a leadership position, if you're a fire chief or you're a paid member or a board member, then you would need to recuse yourself entirely. The county attorneys don't want sort of recusing yourself for one and not the others. So if you're appointed to this board, we've already addressed any conflicts, and having information about what rescue groups, what it really means to be on a team like that is going to be extremely valuable. So we won't have any conflict with that in the spring. All right. Well, I can give you back 45 minutes in your evening. I appreciate your all getting on. You'll be hearing from me. Sounds like Rick, you're going to be out during the getting together around the table time frame, but you be willing to do your scoring ahead of time. I know we've had folks have to do that before. So, great. Well, we can go ahead and have a good evening. And if
Barb,
anybody has
noticed-
questions after this, yeah.
Barb, I noticed that Lynette's back on. Do you want to give her the good news about the vice chair position?
Lynette, when did you join us? Yes,
I don't know. What does this mean?
in absentia, we decided to assign you the position of vice chair. Doug has stepped up to be the chair, and we would like to know if you would like to be vice
Stepped up,
chair.
use that loosely.
He
Can
was
I
forced
nominate-
up the stairs.
Can I nominate my cat? She's sitting next to me, which she never does, but I would just need to find out what that all means, like what the responsibilities are and all of that. And sorry, I
Doug?
was out supporting somebody who has been involved in the search of the missing person up at Gross Reservoir. So I was kind of helping support that person. So
Yeah, I was sharing with what your roles have been at the county, and I probably missed a few. But general support has been your role in some capacity. Open space and crises and emergencies and that kind of thing.
yeah, this was definitely co-responder stuff. Last week was just super heavy. Up in the mountains, there was just a lot of folks that just didn't have good endings. So it's just been a lot. So I was helping her out a little bit. So just figuring out what all it is I need to do and what the responsibilities are. So I don't know. I mean, we can go offline and do that, or you can just email me.
I can chat with you.
Yeah, that would be fine. So
that sounds good. We'll do that.
Cool.
And glad that you were able to get on. We had this system was really different to me tonight, and I couldn't see that you had joined us. So.
And I was trying on my phone. I was in the parking lot at HQ. I was like, maybe I'll try it here, and I'm just gonna go home. So.
Okay. So your cat obviously appreciates that.
She likes it when I'm on the computer.
So funny. Mine is the same way. Ignores me entirely until I start talking on a call.
Yeah. So, and welcome to the new people. Welcome new.
Yeah.
Folks. So
we got to.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Are you going to be around, Lynette, for the October 28th? Is it?
I'm pretty sure.
Gonna miss that?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Harry.
I should be.
Ben. Okay. Great. That's always nice to have a chance to see each other in person. Great. All right. Well, again, reach out. I'm going to send up some follow-up things, and then you'll be hearing from me. We won't meet again until that meeting after you've scored the applications, and then we'll come together and dig in. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.